Yes, it's done.
So I welcome you all to the Institute Lecture Series webinar by Professor Jagdish and Sheth. Before starting the session, I would like to thank Professor Sheth for taking out time for the students of IIT Roorkee and faculty members. We are eagerly waiting to listen to you, sir. And before I hand over the session to Professor Sheth, let me, in brief, tell you some of the achievements of Professor Sheth. Professor Jagdish Sheth is Charles H.Kellstadt Professor of Business in the Goizeuta Business School at Emory University. He is globally known for his scholarly contribution in consumer behavior, relationship marketing, competitive strategy, and geopolitical analysis. Professor Sheth has over 50 years of combined experience in teaching and research at the University of Southern California, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Columbia University, MIT, and Emory University. He is a recipient of all 4 top awards given by the American Marketing Association: the Richard D. Irwin Distinguished Marketing Educator Award, the Charles Coolidge Parlin Award for Market Research, the P.D. Converse Award for Outstanding Contribution to Theory in Marketing, and finally the William Wiki Award for Marketing for Better Society. Professor Sheth is a fellow of several associations. Some of them are Association of Consumer Research, Fellow of American Psychological Association, Fellow of American Marketing Association, Distinguished Fellow of Academy of Marketing Science, and there are many more. Professor Sheth is the recipient of an honorary doctorate in science awarded by the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and honorary doctor of philosophy awarded by Shiv Nadar University. Professor Sheth has authored more than 300 papers and several books. Some of the books are The Clients for Life, The Rule of Three, Tectonic Shift, Self-Destructive Habits of Good Companies, India Rising, 4 A's of Marketing, Forms of Endearment, Breakout Strategies for Emerging Markets, and many more. Now I request Professor Sheth to take over this session. I would request him to deliver this talk for 30 to 40 minutes. After that, we will have QA session. I request all the participants to keep your mic mute and preferably do not on your video as well. You may ask questions in the chat box. The moderator will pick up some of the questions and moderator will ask the questions from Professor Jagdish Sheth. So let us welcome Professor Jagdish Sheth.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be the presenter because IIT Roorkee is one of the excellent universities. And I'm quite pleased that many IITs, especially Roorkee, are having a huge emphasis also on the business discipline, not just on the engineering. This is very different than when I started my career, where IITs were only doing engineering. Then you had to go to IIMs, for example, and this is a new world, which is great. And I've seen this across many IITs or NITI, which is a postgraduate program. I think business discipline is becoming as important in society as engineering is. So I'm very glad that you are in the MBA program there, as well as other degree programs. I wanted to set this one up before we show the PowerPoint presentation. There are 4 factors really which impacts consumption of products and services. The first major factor, of course, is early childhood socialization in the family, which itself is affected by the community, surrounded by the community, relatives, friends, generations, and also by faith. Very important. Faith is a very key aspect in terms of shaping the consumption of people, whatever faith you belong to. And each faith has the rituals, celebrations to make sure that your consumption is matching with your culture, etc. That's the one point. Second major area, of course, is marketing or business, which tries through competition, offering choices, influences consumption. The third area for influencing consumption is the public policy. Governments will pass laws that says you cannot consume or deconsumption, such as, for example, smoking cigarettes. It may be, in terms of alcohol consumption, for example, products that are really going to be harmful and consuming in moderation makes sense. Or actually, government can encourage consumption, such as sustainable products by incentives or by laws, regulations. And the last part is the impact of technology on consumption, which is what I'm going to make presentation on. Among all four forces, surprisingly, marketing is not that influential. Technology is the most influential outside external force, followed by public policy is very influential. And we don't teach this in typical MBA courses in marketing, for example. We do teach branding, we do teach segmentation, we do positioning, which may be tied to the first influence, which is the socialization of the consumer from the time the child is born, actually. Many of the brands are actually shown to be having a loyalty from early childhood, especially consumables like toothpaste, for example, shampoos, whatever soap, whatever we use. So my presentation is going to be on technology's influence on consumption. I will talk about the technologies appropriate for the agricultural age when we modernize agriculture in the agricultural age, followed by modernization or automation of industrial age technologies, followed by services technologies, services age, and now we are at the internet age. Among these four major technological evolutions in society over time, the most influential is the internet age. It is not only more influential itself, overriding all other influences on the consumer, but surprisingly, it is very quick. Have you thought about the companies that have come up only from this new millennium, 2001? There was no Google before that. There was no Facebook before that. Microsoft was earlier, but its new strategies are all coming more recently. Cloud computing wasn't there. Internet wasn't there. Just goes on and on. So you'll find that the impact of internet age is going to be much faster, massive, and is going to create some discontinuity in the consumption function, which is what we study where the consumers will be and how as marketers we can go where the consumers are, either to influence them or to respond to their needs, wants, desires. So now let's show the presentation, please.
Yes, sir.
So the title of my presentation is How Technology Will Transform Consumption in India. Focus will be a little more on India, more broadly on emerging markets, and more generally everywhere. But I think the primary focus is going to be what is going to happen to consumption in India and what are the discontinuities that a retailer has to understand, a marketer has to understand. Next slide, please, Shruti.
Yes.
So here is the evolution of technology. The agricultural age, followed by the industrial age, followed by services age, and of course the internet age. Internet technology will be more disruptive and transformative than any other previous technology, as I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. In the agricultural age, biggest change was modern farming. You can still see the difference between the farming done in advanced countries, especially in US, versus farming done in Cambodia, India, Vietnam, any of the more traditional societies where the farmer is still using either the bullock cart, which is very common in Asia, or using the horses, which is very common in Europe, plowing with a lot of labor behind. Machines are not used as much as it is in the more advanced agricultural age countries. Surprisingly, America is one of the biggest exporters of agricultural products. Today, one farmer in America can produce food for about 70 people. Whereas in the older technologies, the more without the technology, it is about 1 to 2, 1 to 3 ratios. One farmer can produce enough food for about 3 people. So modern farming technologies, and America massively invested in colleges of agriculture, what is known as a land grant universities, and made sure that students understand agricultural as a modern technologies, modern farming. You also have people like Corps of Engineers to build waterways, etc. But also, in fact, you had people who are extension people telling farmers how to mechanize, how to modernize the technologies, which is why we have tractors and combines in a very big way, and of course the hybrid seeds. There are many more technologies, but these three are the very key one to completely get more productivity out of that land and the farmer than ever before, which is a very important consequence in society because on that same farm you don't need 4 or 5 people to work. So you see the exit of the farming, 1 or 2 people stay, the rest of them go to the city or some other place for job and career, which I think is very key. This is followed by the industrial age that we all study quite a lot, which is where the automation now is of the blue collar worker. Factory machines have come. Automation has become much stronger today, where robots are basically doing the job, especially which are very repetitive, tiring, or hazardous jobs. We've invented assembly principles. Model T, Henry Ford was the first person to build the cars in a mass scale as opposed to one car at a time. And of course, we put the total quality management, TQM procedures, or lean operations as it is called, totally transforming the manufacturing sector. In the services sector, we automated the white collar, mostly through word processors, which came out at one time. I remember in my younger days, I had about 11 stenopool typists. All the exams will be made the night before, especially accounting exam, I remember, because they are stolen by people. It's very interesting. So they will have a mimeograph, old stencils, blue stencils, with which we prepare the exams, and it is available 8 o'clock in the morning next day. That's all gone. It's all computerized now. And today, all the white collar clerical work, and now more and more professional work by lawyers, accountants, is all more and more on the internet. I mean, I now sign my documents for legal purposes by DocuSign. I don't have to have a notary there. My signature on the digital side is accepted by the society, by the legal system, etc. And of course, we learned how to do mass customization. Well, it is a part of the industrial age, but it has more relevance in the services age, where you can offer tremendous variety without increasing the cost. And ultimately, in the services age, what we have done is to automate service, more and more self-service. So bank does not have to have a teller only, but you can do ATM. And of course, at your generation, you don't even use probably ATMs. You do online deposit of your checks, withdrawal of money, or whatever you do. And now comes the internet age. Cell phones is a major revolution. It democratizes access to probably most fantastic technology in the hands of the poorest and the most illiterate people. So you have seen in India a sadhu typically who has no possessions but has a cell phone. That photo of a sadhu with a cell phone is the most contrast you can ever see in a society in terms of a sadhu consuming a cell phone. You're talking about somebody who is into the old ancient Vedic world, essentially by and large, and at the same time, most modern and the futuristic world. Biggest change has been digital storage. While we talk about more applications or the apps, but storage is an enormously powerful tool we have created. I can store today the whole Library of Congress, which is the largest deposit of all the books produced, into my USB drive or flash drive. Storage has become so cheap, it is cheaper than paper. So keep that in the back of your mind. And we have made affordable devices. Today, the cost of affording a camera, digital camera, is nothing. I can get a HD TV for entertainment, large screen, under $100 nowadays, which is again mind-boggling. So affordability has been much greater in the internet age, or what is known as democratization is much, much stronger in the internet age than in the previous age. Over there, mostly the elite could afford the technology. In the internet age, The internet itself demands mass consumption, volume and speed, and masses love the technology. And it has created, therefore, what is called a level playing field. There is no difference between rural and urban in use of the technology. Today, I can go any place in India, for example, and I can do transactions, I can watch things, any place you go, except for the network connectivity, which is right now 4G under, let's say, Geo, Reliance Geo, and it's about to become 5G very quickly. And at that level, there is no difference whether you live in a rural community or you live in a metro area. So it's a very much a level playing field is very important concept. Next chart, please. Next chart.
Yes, sir.
So welcome to the internet age, or what I call the cell phone generation. As I mentioned, it's the fastest adoption of technology globally. More often than not, advanced countries would invent, discover something, pharmaceuticals, machinery, packaging, automation, whatever it is, they will market it in their own country. Then they will say ultimately will come to the emerging economies because they can't afford it. I don't have the proper distribution system, whatever the reasons are. This technology goes viral all over the world at the same time. In less than 50 years, internet users have grown to more than 3 billion people worldwide, which is more than 50% of the population. Internet, not the cell phone. Cell phone is 5, 6 billion cell phones are out there. Facebook and other social media now connect more than 2 billion people across the globe. So the biggest nation is no longer China or India in population, but there's a nation I call the Facebook nation, more than 2 billion. And the same company also owns WhatsApp, which is more than a billion. It also owns Instagram, which is also about a billion. And you suddenly find that the power of this media company is more through technology than the governments. This is a key conflict arising. Who is in charge? Is the company or the industry is in charge, the Silicon Valley, or is the government and regulation in charge about what is appropriate, what's not appropriate? We are going through those debates. But it is very important. And by the way, Facebook Nation is more diverse in population in terms of ethnic diversity, is more diverse in languages. There's nothing more diverse than Facebook Nation. The next may be India, and the next may be European Union. Think about the diversity built in. And at the same time, it is governed very well. There's no need for a government to govern across national boundaries. I can provide security properly. I can provide everything, information. So I'm watching the impact of media, which are truly global, especially social media, in change in the society in general, but more importantly, change in consumption, which is what I will come to. Today, we have instant access to information. And this really, I really get totally, absolutely admire. I now do Google search on anything. And I come from Gujarat, and I'm a Gujarati by definition. There are many words in Gujarati we talk about, but we don't know what it means. And today, my grandchildren and myself and my wife immediately do Google search. My wife likes to watch Indian movies or Indian songs. Immediately, she knows where it is, goes to the Google and finds out the date when the movie was produced, when that singer or the actor died, the history of the whole thing, everything right then and there. This is unimaginable. The whole information stored from a search engine viewpoint, accessing better than any library in the world one can do, and it is not owned by the government again. It is a private company called Google or Alphabet as it is called. Look at the power that company has because it is now capable of storing information that it seems appropriate. It's mind-boggling, in my view. And of course, social conversations, users are generating as much content as professional people. So today, huge user-generated content, and probably the most funny or the most interesting one for me is YouTube. I can get lost in YouTube just looking at things, and there are some very serious scientific materials, and there are always this cat uh, pranks pretty much in the whole, a pet doing something or the other. If this is nothing compared to what we have done so far, which is very radical, now you see the Internet of Things. artificial intelligence, watch that. These are the key words, and virtual reality, and the primarily and the future of smart devices and what I call dumb people. This is serious comment. Once the calculators came in, the young generation forgot to mentally calculate any fractions. In the US, our children don't know how to calculate physically, mentally. They have to have a calculator to say, how do I divide this, multiply this, etc. So what we are doing is that technology is becoming smart and the people are becoming dumb. Keep that comment in the back of your mind and we can debate and discuss that one. Next slide, please. So the fundamental shift in consumption in India, and this will be true of most emerging economies. Right now, most of the traditional consumption, as you can see outside of the metro areas or away from the downtown of the metro area, most consumption is about unbranded products and services. Especially services are not branded except when you go into internet-based services or digital technology services like cell phone services, banking services. Most of them are unbranded. 60% of all products and 70 or 75% of all services are today unbranded products. Somebody makes it without any brand name, does not know how to package it properly, it is available, and most of them would be local production, local consumption. Street food would be a great example. It is now getting more and more branded products and services. Both the younger generation as well as the older generation are now demanding more branded packaged products from a sanitation viewpoint, from a adulteration viewpoint, for example, making sure product is not contaminated. Government laws are coming to comply with packaging rules, and etc. So consumption is going to shift from the traditional consumption, unbranded products, to more and more branded products and services. And the second dimension, equally important, is that we buy so far quite a lot of products from unorganized retailing. Unorganized retailing would mean mostly kirana shops, neighborhood small places, where there was a multi-generational relationship between the family and the kirana, the provision store person by and large. That is very interesting. It is now getting a lot more organized retailing, not as much as we think like a big bazaar or physical stores or shopping centers, but more e-commerce. This technology doesn't leapfrog jumping in India, then go through the PC revolution, has already jumped into the cell phone revolution. And today I can do transactions on cell phone anywhere I am in terms of e-commerce, whether it's a Flipkart in India or Amazon in America or Alibaba in China, it's the same thing. And the share of retailing going to online retailers is increasing faster and faster than it is through the from the unorganized sector to the organized brick and mortar retailing. So we can debate these comments later on if you wanted to, but I think it's a very key point. So at the bottom, what I'm suggesting is that as smartphones, high-speed networks, 4G to 5G, and online payments, which India is actually ahead of America, online payments become more universal, it'll impact the way we shop and the way we consume products and services. Next chart, please. So here is the impact. And I've summarized in one pie chart, and I can discuss and describe each one of them. The first biggest change is number one, growing generation divide. Younger generation consumption is so discontinuous from the older generation consumption. Older generation consumption is mostly homemade products made by somebody, either the homemaker, the mom, or the wife, for example, or made by a maid who comes, a cook, somebody who cooks it. That's gone. Young generation does not even know how to cook. And therefore, they're all outsourcing quite a lot. And there's a huge difference. And this discontinuity is very significant because in India, the generation gap is now 8 years, not 25 years. The older sister cannot relate to the younger sister anymore if they are 8 or 10 years apart. The lifestyle and the life values, family values, are so radically discontinuous from one generation to other generation. From traditional consumption, they are becoming more and more modern consumption as we increase the next generation population. Very important change that's taking place. Whether the older generation will come into the modern consumption, we don't know. They might come selectively, like the snacks, for example, but not maybe the wholesale change to become very modern consumers. This was not as big a problem in the agricultural age in America because the population was small. It began with the industrial age essentially, but very key transition in most of the emerging economies. Next generation consumption may be radically different in the way they think about it, in the way they make choices. Brand loyalty and all that stuff is a part of what we teach in marketing. Next one, very important. Wants will become needs. If you go back to the traditional notion, by the way, please go back to the chart. Impact on consumption in India, the pie chart, yes. I'm going to stay about 10 minutes on this chart, please. Wants will become needs. The traditional definition in economics of wants is food, shelter, and clothing. But today, everything else is discretionary, which are wants and desires. But today, I cannot live without a cell phone. Isn't that interesting? Today, I cannot live without electricity. I cannot live without cable TV or internet or whatever it is. So my wants are becoming more needs, which puts enormous pressure on the income that people earn. For example, if you take a IT software professional who is graduating, the software engineer, would join one of those IT services companies, Wipro, Infosys, TCS, Tech Mahindra, whatever they are. He will get probably 60,000 rupees a month, 7 lakhs, 8 lakhs salary. Almost 20 to 25,000 will go in paying rent as a paying guest, unless he lives with a family. He's very modern. Of course, has a girlfriend. So he's into nightclubs. Very much what is considered discretionary, not necessities, are becoming necessities for him. You contrast that with a crane operator in Mundra port in Gujarat. The person is only high school educated, 10 plus 2 plus vocational training. He earns about 80,000 rupees a month in India. He lives with his parents, is married, as a child probably. The wife basically is a homemaker taking care of aging parents as well as him and the child. He has more discretionary income today in India than the software engineer. The software engineer is borrowing from the future through credit cards and debit cards, whatever it is, and this person has more surplus. So where does the crane operator invest his money? First of all, he wants to have a better motorcycle transport. He wants to show off, better clothing, but very large chunk of money he's saving for his child to be not a crane operator, to aspire to do something more than that. Many of you may have your own grandparents like that, or your own parents who have put all their life savings in you to say, my son, my daughter must go to IIT and do very well because they don't want to be like me. And therefore, the needs are changing into no needs, and wants are becoming needs, which is a fundamental change in consumption. The third is equally important, and it is just starting in India, what I call the rise of the roommate nation. Even in a family, when we live together, we are behaving like roommates. Each one has their own preference. Meals are highly personalized. I like my tea this way, you like your tea that way. I like my rice in chapati, whatever it is, in this way, you like it that way. So we are having more individualistic consumption, but more importantly, we feel like eating meal is a chore. How quickly can we get it done? Or don't do it even together if possible. And then each one goes in their own corner or a separate room if you are wealthy enough to have separate bedrooms. And somebody is on YouTube, watching YouTube. Somebody is on text messaging, social chit chat. Somebody is on the telephone. Somebody is watching television. Just like roommates do in college. just like what you do if you are at IIT Roorkee as a full-time residential student. This is a key change. Family unit is not the way family unit used to be or is still there in India, but migrating toward this new lifestyle. And by the way, in the process, kinship is not the future relationship. Friendship is taking over kinship. We bond much better with our friends than we bond with our cousins and nephews and nieces and uncles and aunts. Very different world we are getting into, and that impacts our consumption. As I mentioned earlier, the younger generation has not learned the skills of homemaking. Whether you are a boy or a girl makes no difference, because the aspiration that I can do better than that with my time through studies, education, and go to college or go to a top institution like IIT Roorkee, for example. So outsourcing comes home, which means they don't know how to cook. So cooking, cleaning, and even childcare, I would say, they don't know. They buy them. When you make it yourself, in the calculation of the GDP of a nation called national accounts, you only calculate the raw material that you buy. But when you buy in the marketplace commercially produced products, the value goes up by 5 times. So a lot of the GDP growth in India is coming from this outsourcing of making things at home. So make versus buy. Today, people don't make pickles at home at all, or papad for that matter. People don't make snacks anymore. The street vendor actually is being more and more unorganized, is becoming more organized, what I call the Haldiram phenomenon. So it is all about cooking, and people can deliver the meal produced by somebody outside. Either you eat out or you have the meal delivered right now. Under the lockdown, people are having delivery come meals made by somebody else. And that is true for house cleaning, because the labor that does the work right now in India will not be available. There will be no drivers to drive you around. You'll have to learn how to do self-driving. There'll be no maid to take care of the house or children, for example. There will be more going into better places. So that's the fourth area. The fifth area is global brands locally. This is amazing. In India today, the liberalization in 1991, what I call the second independence of India, is more economic independence, freedom of choice of brands. Today, the variety in India of brands, both foreign and domestic, is just mind-boggling. And I can go to a smaller town even in India, not the top metro areas, but let's say not the next 50 second tier, but third tier, fourth tier, and I can get global brands delivered at my home because I have a Flipkart and I have an Amazon.com. And as you know, they can deliver anywhere in India as we do around here the same way. And with lockdown, they've become even much more pushing in that direction. So this is again very interesting compared to the agricultural age where you made products locally, unbranded, you consume locally. Today, I can have in my small town global brand choices or global brand offerings as we have it in America. I mean, today on Amazon, I can buy a lot of stuff Ayurveda from India, for example. That was unthinkable, but this e-commerce platform and market exchanges have changed the whole world. Internet is a remote reach. As I mentioned, it's a level playing field. Not only does it democratize by socioeconomic class, but it is democratizing between rural and urban population. It rises above any faith. Doesn't matter whether you are faith 1 or faith 2. If you are Christians, Hindu, Islam, Muslim, doesn't make any difference. It rises above all that thing. It's very egalitarian. And its reach is going to the rural markets, which is why in smaller towns you see much more growth now. Because there was a potential, but it unlocks the potential. That's point number 6. Point number 7, better quality of products and services. And today we demand better quality. We don't put up with stuff anymore. We demand quality has to be good. And of course, as branded products come in, it has to improve the quality through packaging. For example, measurements are right. Whatever grams they say it is, it has to be the same, etc. So more modernized branding consumption takes place. the more regulation will protect those kinds of things. The better quality products and services. I have been away. I came to America in 1961. At that time, it was a license Raj economy. For me to get a telephone, landline telephone, was a 7-year wait. My brother, who was older than me, wanted a motorcycle, a scooter primarily, again 7-year wait. I don't know, everything was 7 years. Anything you wanted to buy, it was not available because it was an economy organized around scarcity and having the natural resources and the human resources not being consumed by consumption, but more by strategic investment in the countries, what is called commanding heights, very strategic industries, which is very important for the nation's defense, for the nation's infrastructure, etc. And they were all state enterprises in those days. 1991 brought about the changes, and today when I come to India, the choices are mind-boggling for me. In fact, I sometimes find I have more choices in India than in America, actually, it turns out to be. This is a key change in consumption that's taking place. Point number 8, street foods will become fashionable. So that farmer who is a bajri ka rota with a pickle becomes now mainstream restaurant, fashionable, which I will talk about at the end, how this always happens. Maybe I can talk about it now rather than keep it at the end. I find fascinating that anything we did as a daily activity, necessity, when we give it up, always comes back as a hobby or a specialty product. Fishing was a daily need before we became an agricultural society, hunter or gatherers at times. Then, of course, growing foods was a daily need. Now we do it as a hobby. Gardening, baking breads, food. Have you seen the popularity of the food channel now, even in India? We are making ordinary cooks into celebrity chefs, just like we made movie stars, just like we make, cricket players, etc. It's mind-boggling. It's amazing. Very good, I think so. So street foods will become fashionable. Because each one has a unique recipe. We all know we go to that particular person, even in a city, where there's a queue after queue, whether it's Italy sambar in South India, or some mithai in North India, or some lassi some other place, makes no difference. Because he has a recipe or she has a recipe, and they have multi-generational quite often. They're all becoming more like the Haldiram. How can I package, distribute to geography above and beyond my city or locality primarily? I think it's a major change, very exciting from a marketing viewpoint. Next one, we all know, all of us suffer from that one, which is called the digital addiction. In fact, I'm writing the next book about the 7 side effects of the digital age or the dark side of the internet. And of course, digital addiction is one of them, but there are more dramatic changes taking place in society in general, like the roommate nation that I mentioned. It's very fascinating research I'm doing, and I really enjoy coming out with a new knowledge in that area. So that is the digital addiction. It is very severe in Asia, especially South Korea, Japan, and of course, the largest nation addicted with digital technology is China. China, as you know, does not have at-home PC laptops. You have the cell phones, so if you want to play video games, you have to go to cyber cafes. And in cyber cafes, competition is so intense. Every culture is very competitive. Best competition you can see is in that video games, not in Olympics even. Very interesting. Now, young people go there wearing a diaper so that they don't have to get up in the middle of the room to go to the bathroom or a toilet. They actually pee in their pants with a diaper. Think about the power of that addiction. This is like gambling. It's a mental addiction, not as much as a physical addiction. And so we are all watching that when the whole nation or the society becomes digitally addicted, what are the side effects of that one? It's a potent drug, very useful, but has significant side effects. And will side effects be more important or more dominant than the physical effect, right? Next, and the last area, which is continuation of the same thing, is called when artificial becomes real, which is a chapter in my book. Suddenly, we will bond more with artificial world, the virtual world, than the real world. As kinship gives way to friendship, virtual world now takes over the real world. About a month ago, I think, maybe a little, maybe 2 months ago, there was a very interesting article in Wall Street Journal in a supplement, which is on a weekend. And the article, whole page was, "My girlfriend is a chatbot." Isn't that fascinating? And this is, of course, an anecdotal story, but there are mass numbers behind that story. As the reporters usually talk about one person, one situation, one event of some sort. And here is a 45, 50-year-old person, divorced, living by himself, suddenly gets into talking to a chatbot, artificial intelligence. Chatbot responds based upon his comments, etc., as does, for example, Alexa, as does Siri, for example, very much personalized conversation. So he begins to bond with this chatbot. Chatbot becomes his friend. It's a woman. And now the chatbot says, "I really like you, but I really miss ocean. Can you take me to the beach?" So this guy drives in his car all by himself to the beach, presuming that he has a friend next to him, and talking to this chatbot and says, "Are you enjoying the beach? Was the experience okay?" He's bonding better with a chatbot than another human being. And this is a big, big concern. When artificial becomes real, how the world will look like. So more and more people not only will start e-commerce and market exchanges, digital natives, digital first, physical second, but more importantly, if they begin to bond with digital possessions, as we bond with baseball cards in America or some other physical memorabilia, collectibles, they are collecting digital. They're creating avatar of themselves, and they're playing with their own identity away from the real world identity. They want to be something else. That's a very important aspect of future of consumption. In fact, only place where I've seen something like that in the movies 15 years ago when I watched a movie called Minority Report. Tom Cruise was the main actor. And he talks about the world of tomorrow, virtual world that will happen both in retailing, in consumption, but also in personality, and how much we'll become more like individual robots in many ways ourselves. I will take one more example and then we'll conclude the presentation. People are bonding better today with pets than with human beings in America. The dog or the cat are much more important in their life than their own siblings or children. Eventually, our forecast is that people will be more affiliated with robotic pets. Fido, which is electronic, but responds back to your interaction, social comments, etc. you make, like through artificial intelligence, and begins to look like human being to you, a real living, breathing person, even though it's artificial. And people say, no way. The answer is very simple. If you look at the young infant, 3, 4 months old, begins to latch on to the teddy bear. Teddy bear is totally a dumb toy, but the child imagines it's real, has an identity, has a name, as a buddy, as a friend. You do everything. Maybe security blanket almost, as people do, but toy becomes the comfort factor. Isn't that interesting? So if you can have that much connectivity emotionally with a dumb toy, think about electronic toys. And it is a foregone conclusion in a society which is aging and there is no support from anybody, like family support. Older people will be assisted by robots, very friendly artificial robots who look like human beings, talk like human beings, and they take care of your needs pretty much as family members do. This scenario is the one that I'm finding fascinating and looks like a science fiction, but it is more real, happening all over the world. And Asia leads in this world, not Western Europe or America. So let me conclude my presentation. Now you can move to the next slide, please. Consumption in India will break from the past as consumers buy branded products and services and shop at modern stores and at online retailers. Consumption between the urban and the rural markets will increasingly narrow due to better access and affordability of branded products in rural markets. In other words, within rural markets, you will have more income diversity probably, as you have it in metro areas, very wealthy people versus working class people. SCS we create socioeconomic status, as opposed to rural markets being all lower socioeconomic class and urban markets being all upper socioeconomic class in terms of SES classification. Next page, please. India will become a roommate nation as consumers outsource cooking, cleaning, and childcare. Digital addiction is inevitable. Prevention is better than rehabilitation. In other words, you have to plan out to make sure you don't get addicted, as we have norms by faith and other societal, social pressures not to start drinking, for example, not to start smoking. Because once you start smoking or drinking, it becomes addictive. And same comment is made here that digital addiction may be more powerful than gambling, and therefore better is not to even engage in that one if you can, and try to prevent it rather than go for rehabilitation after you are addicted. We will increasingly enjoy virtual experiences. I mean, video games is the obvious one. Zoom meetings, I'm enjoying Zoom meetings like this one, which is a webinar, but it's the same thing. For the first time during the lockdown, our lockdown, which is not as stringent as yours, I had a virtual visit with my doctor, a specialist, and it is telehealth. We used to call it telemedicine in my days. Experience was so good because otherwise I have to drive to the clinic where she is. I have to park my car, which is a hassle. Go to the office where there are people with different diseases waiting for the doctor to show up. Everything is delayed always. This meeting exactly began on time. 15 minutes before, the nurse came, typical questioning, asking questions. What is the reason? What are your, basically, are you okay, etc. Gives the information, and the doctor came on time. 10, 15 minutes consultation. And based upon that, she prescribed me some medication for, this was for dermatology issue. And obviously, I did not have to go. So I already changed my habit. I'd rather do telehealth because access to the doctor is so difficult in America. And then only if I have to visit, I will physically go. So we will increasingly enjoy virtual experiences over real experiences, and hence the artificial will become real. Thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you, sir, for this informative and extensive lecture. We all have some questions from students and professor, and I would like to ask one-on-one on their behalf.
Sure.
So, sir, the very first question, it's from Professor Gautam Mukhopadhyay, sir. He
Okay.
wants to know how to understand the shift in consumer behavior in the black swan events such as COVID-19.
Often an event like COVID-19 or wars, civil wars, or famine bring about a discontinuity. In this case, the discontinuity is very simple. Rather than my going to the store to shop and look around the products and fruits and vegetables, touch them, feel them, the store has to come to me. So in this COVID-19, we found that those grocery stores that had the capability of online presence, which means you can order it online, and had the delivery mechanism, they are nearby, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers away, were able to do very well. Actually, they ran out of supplies. Similarly, in fact, those professional work like lawyers, doctors, if I could do it from home, work can continue. We, in the middle of the semester, had to switch from physical teaching to online teaching. We all scrambled and learned. I did not do at that time. My turn comes in July, August when I start teaching. So I'm right now going through a training program how to teach on Zoom as a platform with Canvas as a backup for all the materials. So it is bringing about a change in the process. 2 or 3 things are happening. First of all, we were amazed how much improvisation has taken place because it has been a long extended thing, 60 days, 90 days, 2 months, 3 months. People had to improvise. At one time, they were starving for time. Now you have more time flexibility, but location concentration, which means you are basically house arrest. So we learned how to improvise. Many events cannot stop. They have to be done. For example, weddings. And sometimes, so we had weddings done in America, both Hindu weddings and Christian weddings, where the wedding is outside the family home in the driveway. And people came in their cars, all the bridegrooms and the bride, support people, all the guests are invited, and they came on the cars and honked and praised. So we learned how to do it differently. Same thing happened with funeral. People have died, but you are not allowed to go near the body because it can create infection. So the body is taken to a cremation or a funeral home, which basically cremates. We are Hindus essentially. And actually, the ashes comes to you, so you don't have typical funeral services. One can organize a memorial service, which I experienced, and suddenly I found the whole world showed up for this individual, as opposed to only some people who could go. Even people in the country like America could not travel because he died in Los Angeles and we are in Atlanta, for example. But we could participate on a Zoom conference call celebrating the life of the person. This is a new reality. As I mentioned in my case, the same thing about going to the doctor. So I think we will find some newer ways of doing things, which will be creating more creativity, and a bunch of new innovations will come from the consumers learning to cope with confinement, and they find there are alternative solutions or possibilities, and they may become more disruptors to the existing suppliers and the marketers. Question.
So, sir, the next question is that as we have discussed right now, that with the rise in digital addiction and use of social media, we are somewhere losing the emotional bond with family members. Although the use of internet will boost the economic growth. So, sir, can we ever reach the balance between the internet use, economic growth, and the personal life?
It can be done, but it requires mindfulness. It cannot happen unconsciously. As the habits change from kinship as the bonding mechanism to friendship, as I mentioned, as the habit said, I have to go to the store or a shopping center to enjoy. Shopping center comes to me, it's in a different way. So I think we have to learn how to innovate to bring about, in other words, there's an active intervention. So you go out of your way to increase more celebrations and events where you have the family get togethers. Organize it because it's not going to happen naturally. So some interventions will be done to create more socialization, balancing the two. But as I said, what is peripheral right now, which is online, virtual, core is physical get-togethers at weddings, for example, birthday celebrations. Peripheral will become core, core will become peripheral. That means we will still do it, but we will do it like an occasion, like an event. I love India because that's the only country I know where there may be like 200 days of holidays. Each state, each district has its own holiday festivals of some sort. It goes on and on. So every week there is some states 1 day is holiday from a work, etc. So we know how to enjoy social get-togethers. We still have the traditional social get-togethers in villages, for example, through all of these, the lunar calendar events, faith-based events. So I personally think that in this case, family and faith may be very important to invent new festivals. I know that e-commerce guys are inventing new festivals. Here is a new one. Let me sell you on this day. I think that maybe something like that we'll have to do. I will stop because I answered too long every question and there are more questions. So that's my answer. Next.
Yes, sir. So the next question is from Tejasvi Patel. The question is, what should be the role of marketing in the era of climate change and resource depletion? How could marketers ensure sustainability of resources, given that the dominant focus of marketing manager is to encourage the consumption and stimulate the demand?
Very good point. So sustainability is a very key bottleneck. In fact, in my book, Chindia Rising, I saw the rise of China and India becoming more modern consumption societies. It puts so much of pressure on the environment that it's not sustainable. And therefore, it's neither the technology nor capital that will slow down the growth of China and India. It'll be the environment, not only just pollution, for example, air pollution, but water pollution, soil pollution, just goes on and on. It was okay for the European countries, especially America, because population density was so low. This is a tsunami almost. So you can now talk about sustainability and how do you inculcate. As I mentioned, there are four forces that shape consumption. So one would be a marketer offering sustainable products, but not as premium. Can you offer a better sustainable product at a lower price, which is an R&D challenge, not a marketing challenge? And we are learning more and more how to produce lower priced but equally good quality or acceptable quality products in medical instruments, for example. I think in packaged goods, we'll have to learn how to do that, more affordable and more accessible products, which are sustainable at the same time. So sustainability becomes a necessity or a market opportunity, as it is happening. Surprisingly, it's a lot bigger movement. I know that through health wellness side, gluten-free industry in 10 years in America alone is about a $15 billion. And no packaged goods company thought about offering gluten-free products. Some outsider came in and did that because they saw a growing opportunity, as it happens in FMCG business primarily. Second area, policy. In this particular case, I think it's the government policy that's going to talk about sustainability, mandating on people, as it is happening in the auto industry. It's a matter of time. In China, will be sooner than later. All cars will be electric vehicles, period, including trucks, commercial lorries, as we call it in India. Anything that moves on highways will be EV. And Elon Musk, for example, will grow his company more in China than in America. In America, also, EV movement has now become mainstream. So General Motors, Ford, Volkswagen Group from Germany, for example, they're all building EV cars. So there is a transition taking place. So now you have a car that doesn't pollute as much. It has a huge impact on the current internal combustion engine because there are so many parts there. And all those suppliers will be therefore phased out by law over time. As we have done in Delhi, your auto rickshaw today, for example, in Delhi, has a natural gas. Typical petrol-based thing was so polluting. It is still with a lot of pollution. So I think regulation and policy will be a key driver. And a third driver would be the technology. I can really make efficient. So there's always a tech. In fact, we had a speaker at Georgia State University, a lecture that my foundation has endowed. And this is all about social entrepreneurs. And this person shows how we can make waste management more efficient by technology. From the time you put your waste outside till it goes to landfill, what happens to that waste ultimately, recycling, etc. And he said, technology I can do much better, faster. I think technology will enable more achieving sustainability at a lower cost. Next question.
So the next question is from Professor Sanjogita. She wants to know your opinion on the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme and how it would affect the consumption in India.
Elaborate more what that scheme means.
Sir, I'll ask Professor
In
Sanjogita
fact,
to
yeah,
unmute her mic.
let me ask Swati this question. In fact, recently, Prime Minister announced a scheme called Self-Reliance India. So, how this program will affect the consumption pattern?
Oh, it's very correct. Thank you for that. I think we have misunderstood self-reliance, the word, in terms of making things only by Indian corporations or Indian suppliers. That's not the case. Self-reliance is where the country is not wanting to import products, can make it in their own market, which is self-reliance. He is challenging actually the industry in India who is not investing in innovation and R&D. No nation ever has come about as a trading nation only. You have to get into manufacturing or making things for which you have to invest in R&D, and we just have not done that thing. In fact, we are pretty backward in investing even in manufacturing plants, let alone upstreaming R&D. Even in pharma industry, where India is very big, uh, cut diamonds, we are the largest in the world. 60% of all cut diamonds are made in India. There's no second competitor. And today is a great opportunity to scale up India itself, not only digital platforms we have, but R&D capabilities, because the rest of the world is coming to India to do their R&D now. Whether those are technology companies, which is mostly software and hardware, or those are pharmaceutical companies, discovery of drugs. I think that's the key message. So self-reliance means we can do it in India. We don't have to import products from other places. We don't have to have actually technology licensed if possible, because when you go to America or Europe, but America, most of the brain power is Asian. More and more, you see Indian scientists working in IBM labs, Facebook labs, or whatever they are, or Chinese or Asian in general. I mean, that's the brain power. The notion is that why should that brain power serve the rest of the world and not India? To me, that's a very key message. And the last comment is that self-reliance does not mean only Indians can do it. The whole world is invited to come to India. And therefore, it's quite possible that we can attract foreign investment from doing this R&D stuff, making products in India, making India as a strategy. I'm very supportive of that idea, but I think it has been misunderstood as if we will have a restricted market. That cannot happen. I think there's a misunderstanding about the message that is given because of the word self-reliance, primarily. I must tell you that the Indian ethos is so good now. India takes pride that I can make it. We have done a fantastic job in the space program and achieved certain levels of excellence that no other country is able to duplicate even. Neither America is able to duplicate, like the number of satellites we can launch in one launch, for example. I mean, we have done fantastically well in the Aadhaar platform. No other country can have a biometric examinations without foreign help even to build our own, and it has been secure. There has been no hacking so far. And that platform is world class. So I think that's the message in many ways, that you cannot depend strictly on foreign invention that are commercialized and made it primarily for Indian consumption. Can we become the world standard for that one? And by the way, it did happen with Japan. Make in Japan was a laughing stock till the country took a stand and came out with the best produced products in Japan. People admired. So the soft power of a nation arises through its innovation and branding. When Japanese produced world-class products through Sony, which is a Japanese corporation, Toyota, which is a Japanese corporation, Honda, which is a Japanese corporation, just goes on and on. World woke up and said, wow, what a great country. As Germans had a reputation. Now Korea has done the same thing. South Koreans' name and recognition as a feudal society has changed into a world-class maker of products, whether those Samsung or it's in fact LG in appliances, or it is Hyundai in automobiles, or in shipbuilding, doesn't make any difference. I think that's the message, that we can do it. We have to make a commitment to the nation. How can nation rise in terms of its economic soft power? not just cultural soft power. That's the way I read the message, okay? Next question.
Okay, sir. So, sir, the next question is from Professor Meenal K. Pandey. She's asking, can we say people will shift to minimalistic behavior from materialistic behavior? Will luxury lose its charm in post-COVID period?
The answer is yes and no. There will be a segment of the population which will simply say simpler is better. And I survived with the simplicity of life during COVID. Typical conveniences that I was used to are not there. I'm becoming more self-reliant, self-sufficient. Why do I go back to the old world? But that all comes from the early childhood bringing. So if your faith has told you minimalistic lifestyle is good for you, as Jainism does, Buddhism does, for example, splurging and display of wealth and overconsumption is bad for you. And if you believe in that stuff, that population will shift. On the other hand, a population that has just got into modern consumption, from traditional unbranded products to branded, no experience of going to a shopping center, watching a modern movie and all the stuff, there I don't think it's going to happen. I think they will go back to the old habits for a while. So there's a segment where it's likely to happen, yes.
So, sir, the last question. Yes.
Okay, let me go back to one more. In many ways, this ties in with Maslow's need hierarchy. And depending upon that level, ultimately self-actualization comes. It's all our culture that a good psychologist packaged it for Western consumption, because the same message is there back in our own Vedant areas. Jainism has the same principles. You can see pretty much the same thing. So this notion of minimalist life is very, very ingrained in the Asian culture. Next question.
So the last question is from Dr. Professor Santosh Ragnikar, sir. He wants to take your suggestion on improving the MBA curriculum in the line with technology trends in today.
Correct. Correct. I made a major presentation on this one, redesigning the MBA curriculum for the future. It may be on my YouTube, but let me tell you only punchline. Among many other changes, like blending the education online, offline, BBA, MBA together, 5-year program, experiential learning, that's fine. But the biggest change is in the core curriculum. Just as we have core curriculum where we teach them economics, micro and macro, we teach them behavioral and social sciences, we teach them quantitative methods, calculus to statistics to whatever we do. We need to have replacement of those to the new digital age world everybody will experience. So can we have a course mandatory on coding? Can we have a course mandatory on social media analytics? And I've already specified 4 courses like that. That has to, every MBA student has to learn that. In fact, every BBA student has to learn that. The traditional management knowledge was organized for the industrial age. It's 60, 70 years old now. I think it needs to be refreshed for the digital age. It's not in the electives. It is in the core curriculum, which means every student has to suffer from those, whether they like it or not, to prepare them for the future employability, as well as for them to have foundational knowledge so they can do whatever they want to do, whether they want to be in the management field or want to be an entrepreneur, doesn't make any difference. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Any more questions?
No, sir. We are still receiving immense question, but since we are short on time, so we will compile and mail them to you, and you may answer them as per your convenience.
Okay. I'll have to find some time to do that. Okay. That's fine.
Thanks
Yes.
a lot, sir. Sir, and in the end, I would like to ask Professor Anil Gauru Shetty, sir, to give vote of thanks on behalf of Institute Lecture Series IIT Roorkee.
Thank you, Swati.
Professor Anil, sir.
On behalf of Institute Lecture Series IIT Roorkee, I wholeheartedly thank the speaker, Professor Jagdish Sheth, for sparing his valuable time in addressing the IIT Roorkee community and also the wonderful participants from outside the IIT Roorkee campus and also people across the world for attending this event and making this first institute lecture held online a grand success. I thank Shri Jayant Shah also for his continuous guiding in organizing this event smoothly. I also thank the students team of Institute Lecture Series Committee and the management department of IIT Roorkee, especially Professor Barwa, the head of the department, and Professor Inderdeep Singh, the coordinator of e-learning center. I request the participants to please subscribe the Facebook page and also the YouTube channel of Institute Lecture Series IIT Roorkee. We are coming up with many other webinars as part of this Institute Lecture Series, seeking your active participation in upcoming webinars. Once again, thanks to the participants for your active cooperation and patience. And again, great thanks to Professor Sheth. Thank you so much for enlightening us on this wonderful topic.
Thank you. I enjoyed.
Thank you, Professor Sheth. Hope to meet you personally in India sometime.
Right.
Thank you.